Hello and welcome back to LTC Heroes Live by Experience Care. My name is Peter Murphy Lewis. I am your host. Today I'm really excited to be talking to you live from LeadingAge Nebraska in Kearney, Nebraska. I'm talking to the CEO of Imperial Manor Parkview Heights. Her name is Lynne West. Lynne, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Lynne, I'm excited to talk to you because you just revealed before it started that this is your first LeadingAge.
It is.
Tell me why you decided to come this year.
Well, I really wanted to come and connect with my peers, kind of pick their brains, see who's doing what in the industry, what's working well, try and kind of, think tank with people and learn from the others that are kind of walking the same path I'm walking.
And feel free to say I don't have questions yet, but my question for you, if you could find an expert in this topic soon as you get out of this interview in the hallway and who has 10 years of experience in the thing that you're trying to get help with, what would that topic be? You could tap on that person's shoulder and say, can I have a coffee with you? I need help with this.
I think it would definitely be how do you grow and retain your staff to take care of the residents? Because that's kind of my biggest obstacle is making sure I've got the right people to take care of the residents 24 hours a day.
I think you're not alone. I've been traveling around the country, and I think that's on everybody's mind.
Yep.
Tell me how long you've been in long-term care.
So long-term care, about 5 years.
So tell me how long you've been in healthcare.
A very long time. I began my nursing journey when I was in high school. I was in a pilot program in upstate New York where I was able to do my LPN my last 2 years of high school. That was pretty exciting. I had to wait and take my boards after I turned 18 and then continued my career, became an emergency room nurse. And at that time you had to have your RN. So I had to go back to school for my RN. Absolutely loved being an ER nurse. I was an ER director for a company with 70 different emergency departments. And then that transition, because doing that for a long, long time wears you down. Transitioned into a hospice role. I absolutely love that, and that sort of segued into long-term care.
I'm going to ask you about your initiation story, and feel free to say, I was 7 years old and I walked into a nursing home, or feel free to say, it was 5 years ago and I knew something about post-acute care, but I didn't know how complex it was. Tell me about the first impactful moment you had in long-term care and why?
Great question. I would say long-term care specifically, I would be meeting my fiance's grandfather. He was a resident of the nursing home that I'm working at, and it was really difficult to see him as someone who served his country, living in this COVID environment where he couldn't go out, he couldn't have anybody in. We had to visit him through the glass window, couldn't hug him, couldn't share any emotion, and it just hit me that I felt compelled. I have to do something. I have to make this better for the people working and living in that environment.
Your first 3 months as CEO, first 3 months in long-term care, what was the biggest learning curve? What was the hardest part for you? Was it the human side? Was it the staffing side? Was it on your feet all day? Was it the reimbursements?
It was realizing I could not do it all myself. And it's really humbling when you have to ask for help to get stuff done. But, at the end of the day, I had to realize I could not do it all.
Tell me a story that you have. And it could be with your fiance's father, or maybe some resident that you didn't know was going to mark your life. And you're like, oh, man, I really like this. I got in this mainly because of my fiance, but now even if I weren't with my fiance, I kind of love this place.
Yeah. There's so many residents that I look forward to going and seeing every morning. Over in the assisted living and independent living, I go over to those folks first because they're up earlier and having breakfast, and we just have some great conversations, and you get to know the people. They know the history of the community, and if I'm not there, they want to know why. Like I had to prep them yesterday. Hey, I won't see you guys until Friday morning, but I will be back. Because when I'm not there, they miss me and I miss them. I miss that interaction with them a lot.
And I'll tell you why I'm going to ask the next question. If I'm a 17-year-old and I feel the longing or that my purpose is in helping America's seniors, what's the differentiators about Imperial, why they should at least think about going and working at your place? What's special about your community?
I think what's special about us is we really try to have a culture that's welcoming to the staff. We understand the work is very difficult, but we want to have fun. I'm One of the ones we dress up often in goofy themes to make the residents laugh, and I'm dressed right alongside of them getting ready for Easter. I wear the full body Easter Peeps costume, and it's difficult to kind of navigate through the doorways because I think if I show my vulnerability, it makes everybody kind of laugh, and they see that I am approachable. And especially, the younger, the high school students, they come in. I say, look, I don't know if you'll ever want to be a nurse one day. That'd be fantastic. But you might come work here, get to know the residents, get to know the staff, and you might say, I want to go into physical therapy, occupational therapy. Might want to be a social worker. There's so many avenues when you go into, clinical practice.
I'm going to ask you about the difference in attributes of a frontline caregiver and the difference between acute and post-acute. And feel free to tell me what I'm saying is an exaggeration, but I feel one main difference is the amount of time that you have in long-term care, and one of the things that you probably need to have that makes you really good in long-term care as opposed to acute, you have to be an amazing listener. Are there other attributes that you feel that you've added to your skill set that in a way long-term care has either taught you or helped you improve?
Listening is absolutely key because a lot of times we'll start, an interaction with someone preconceived how it's going to go. And if you're not actively listening, you could completely miss what the person's trying to communicate to you. So it's definitely taught me to slow down a little bit. I'm from upstate New York, as I said earlier. So I tend to be very, very fast paced. Let's go. Let's get everything done. And that's not what long-term care is about. Long-term care is you're coming into their home. They're not coming into your workplace. We're going into their home, and we have to stop and meet and listen to them at the level they're at and see what they're dealing with on that particular time.
I don't really know how I'm going to phrase the next question, Lynne, so you might have to help me or bear with me. What I'm trying to get at is I'm rather new to post-acute care, three-ish years. So I'm trying to understand, your first 6 months working in a senior living community, what that was like and what you were trying to learn. And then when did you get to a place, maybe in the last 6 months or a year, you said, now it's time for me. I've done everything that I can do with my hands and my feet inside my facility. Now I need to go to a convention and I need to talk to people who've been doing this for 30 years. I told you it was a bad question, but I feel like you're smart enough to help make sense of it.
I don't think it's a bad question. I don't know that I know the right way to answer it. What I think is challenging is every day is a little bit different. Senior care changed so much during COVID with the restrictions, with the mandates. For me, it was completely turning everything around. Coming to a convention like this, it's the opportunity to get to network with people who may have been doing it for 30 years or may also be newer in the role like me, who are saying, okay, how do we do this now outside of COVID? And it's just, for me, it's trying to put ourselves, and I was saying the speaker that was up right now, they just brought to light. So we have this small county fair every August, and this past August, we were still wearing masks in the nursing home, so it was pretty kind of regulated. And we decided to take our residents on a hayrack ride through the parade route in town. But we decided to do something different. We loaded all the residents, we loaded a bunch of our staff. We had over 1,000 water balloons and a dozen super soakers with these big buckets of water. So as these senior citizens were going through the parade route, they were throwing water balloons at the kids, and the kids were going wild, and the parents were laughing, and it was just the coolest moment. The residents on the hayrack ride, they were throwing water balloons at each other, at the staff. We had such a great time. And I have one resident, Bonnie, we got to the very end of the parade route. We pulled back up in front of the building, and she said, do we have to go back inside? And it sank in my chest. And I went, no, we don't. And I got on my cell phone, and I called ahead to the parade route, and I said, we want to go again. And they're like, what? Nobody's ever gone again. I'm like, they've been locked up for 2 years. We're going again. And they're like, okay. So we just pulled out. And then as we were going through this tiny little town, the people were like, oh my gosh, it's the residents again. And we came back, we finished the parade route, we'd run out of all the water balloons, and I think that's something I hope I can share with somebody else here and say, you know what, those residents were kids. I got to see the joy on their faces and the joy on the kids in the streets and their parents, the shock. And, we played really cool 50s music and different dance music. And it was kind of like, this is kind of our why. It was a really cool moment.
That is so beautiful. I was going to ask you, if I asked you to take off your humble hat, what would be one of your proudest moments? That sounds like that would have to be a top 3.
Yeah, honestly, that really would be it. And it was Bonnie, when Bonnie said, "Do we have to go back inside?"
That's so cool.
And I'm like, "No, you don't. We're going to go again." Yep.
That is so cool. I feel like they're going to ask for that again next year.
I hope so.
You guys are going to get a reputation.
Oh, I hope so.
Is there anything that, I guess I'm going to ask about healthcare. Is there anything about working in healthcare that has changed you as a human being, that when you go home, you're different as a mom, you're different as a neighbor, you're different as a partner, different as a spiritual person? How has either acute care, post-acute care, long-term care affected who you are?
Well, I would say, again, it's difficult for me to realize I can't do as much as I want to do in a day. And I would say spiritually, emotionally, physically, sometimes when I get home from work, I'm completely drained. I have nothing left to give to anybody else, to my kids, to my spouse, and that's hard. So I'm trying to find a better work-life balance. But again, I when you're taking care of people who've been locked up and confined for so long, you realize they deserve it. And if it's not going to be, who is it going to be? I've got amazing CNAs and care assistants. They're phenomenal. They care so much, but they're also busy running around. So sometimes if I could just sit and spend a little bit more time with that resident that they may not get otherwise, it was well worth it, but it does have an expense on my personal well-being.
Before we were talking about one of the key attributes of working in healthcare, and especially our industry, is being a good listener. Who do you think of when you think of a great listener at your organization? Who's a CNA, or maybe a cook, or maybe a maintenance person who is just an A+ in listening? And just so your staff knows, I'm asking you for one person. I'm not telling you your top person or to name all 15. Just share a name that comes to mind. We all have someone who knows that person's an amazing listener.
I would say Donna, and Donna works in our dining services. So she brings the residents their meals. And she's just this itty-bitty person, and she runs so fast and nonstop, but she stops and she listens to the residents. She talks to them. She makes them feel just so special. She's excellent at what she does.
Lynne, thank you so much for joining me on LTC Heroes. It was a pleasure. It's my first time at LeadingAge Nebraska. It's your first time. We're both going to enjoy it together. Let's go about and hear it.
Sounds great. Thank you so much.